For as long as humans have had children over the centuries, they have been trying to figure out how not to. As such, it is in order to state that the issue of birth control has been with us since time immemorial. Countless artifacts dating to antiquity indicate that humans have been using contraceptives for a long time. Unsurprisingly, not all birth control methods were effective. In ancient China, for instance, concubines would drink a cocktail of mercury and lead, but rather than act as a contraceptive, the side effects of this dangerous concoction were infertility, kidney failure, brain damage, and ultimately death. In ancient Egypt, women applied a mixture of sodium carbonate, crocodile dung, and honey before intercourse to avoid pregnancy. In Greece, a gynecologist called Sir Honest advised women to hold their breath during sex and sneeze afterward to avoid conception. In medieval Europe, women were advised to tie weasel testicles around their necks or thighs during intercourse to prevent pregnancy. All these attempts at coming up with effective contraception were not all in vain, as many modern forms of contraception have their roots in ancient pasts. The practice of induced abortion, for example, has been around since ancient times. People across the ages have tried different things to attempt or perform an abortion, including using sharpened implements, administering abortifacient herbs, and applying abdominal pressure, to name a few. Following the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we must cultivate a proper understanding of the past to understand the unfolding present. In this Liber-Tea episode, we will be exploring the complicated history of abortion and women's sexual health in the Western world, and the effects of the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court on women's sexual reproduction, health, and rights. Ideas about abortion have evolved a lot over the years. Abortion has been with us for as long as unplanned pregnancies occur. Throughout history, women have been trying to eliminate unplanned pregnancies using various remedies, medications, and charms. In most instances, these methods were ineffective or extremely dangerous to women. For example, it was believed that applying crocodile dung in ancient Egypt would trigger a woman to abort. Essentially, this was more likely to cause a woman to develop an infection rather than trigger an abortion. Over time, doctors did develop some abortion techniques that resemble the modern abortion procedures we have today. However, without a proper understanding of hygiene and instruments, these abortion techniques were extremely dangerous. For example, in New York, during the 1830s, surgical abortion had a 30% fatality rate regardless of the hospital setting. Before 1840, abortion was largely stigma-free and widespread practice for American women. It was a common thing to see abortion advertisements in newspapers. According to historians, the idea that fetuses have rights superior to those of women is a relatively new concept. Organized opposition to abortion commenced more than a century before the Supreme Court ruling in Roe v. Wade, 1973. In the mid-1800s, a group of male physicians sought ways to distinguish themselves from midwives who also performed abortion procedures. During that period, medical practice was not regulated, and different healers competed with doctors for customers, especially regarding women's reproductive health. After the formation of the American Medical Association in 1847, it was established that physicians had a better understanding of the female anatomy and embryos compared to female healers and midwives. As such, they were better placed to conduct abortions. Historians, on the other hand, note that this was not true. This move was only designed to discredit healers and midwives to assume control of the market. Doctors also lobbied for states to promulgate abortion laws to cement further their position as the sole providers of reproductive health care services to women. Despite criminalizing abortion at every stage of pregnancy, the government did not stop them from occurring. According to the Guttmacher Institute, during the 1950s and 1960s, illegal abortions ranged from 200,000 to 1.2 million per year. Many physicians provided surgical abortions and medications to women across the country legally. However, the discovery of penicillin made surgical abortions safer. Additionally, absent any regulations, abortions quickly turned into dangerous procedures. By the 1960s, the devastating consequences of anti-abortion laws were clear for everyone to see, and Americans began demanding change. Illegal abortions were becoming a public health crisis in the U.S., with thousands of women dying in back alley clinics. During the early 1970s, feminist activists, clergy groups, and the American Bar Association called for the government to repeal abortion laws. In 1967, Colorado and California became the first American states to repeal their abortion laws. In 1970, New York repealed its abortion laws. In 1973, the pro-choice movement had a big win following the celebrated Roe v. Wade decision, where the U.S. Supreme Court legalized abortion across the country. The ruling of the Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade ignited the anti-abortion movement we know today. This movement has deep religious ties and is mainly made up of various Christian denominations and other religious individuals. Members of this group argue that the fetus is a life and, as such, has a right to life. During the late 70s and early 80s, evangelicals joined the anti-abortion movement, increasing its clout and size tremendously. The period when abortion became a partisan issue in the U.S. When the Republican Party in 1976 realized the immense voting power of the anti-abortion movement, it added an anti-abortion stance to its manifesto. Republican politicians like Ronald Reagan won elections for a long time largely due to this movement's votes. In 1992, the Supreme Court made it harder for states to restrict abortion laws by reaffirming the constitutional right to abortion. This happened in the Planned Parenthood of Southern University of Southern Pennsylvania versus Casey matter. In June 2022, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This expected but controversial ruling gives states the power to create their own abortion laws. Pursuant to Roe v. Wade, abortions were permissible within the first 2 trimesters of pregnancy. The decision reached by the Supreme Court in Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization 2022 has led to the abolition of 50 years of federal abortion rights in the U.S. pursuant to the court's decision. Currently, over half the states will severely restrict or criminalize abortion. This ruling will affect millions of people across the nation. Many women will be forced to cross state lines secretly and illegally to pursue reproductive health care. However, some states have promised to maintain liberal laws regarding the matter. Thank you for listening to this wonderful discussion about the history of abortion. We hope you have enjoyed and learned something. Like, share, and subscribe to Liber-Tea for more riveting discussions. Feel free to comment below and tell us what you think will be the consequences of overturning Roe v. Wade.